Hi everybody, welcome to the next session of week 7, and in this session we are going to be talking about the recruiting app that we started working on in the last lesson. And I was wondering if we have any volunteers in our class who would like to demonstrate some of the stuff that they've built as part of the 2 modules for the build a data model for recruiting app and customize the user interface for a recruiting app. Would anybody like to volunteer to do some of the demo, all of the demo? Doesn't really matter. Whichever bit you feel confident in. I will play wind noises. Okay. Jeremy, I think it might be you. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Are you okay to do that, or would you like it that I maybe take you through it?
No, I'm fine. I'll let you guys walk through it. Give me a second to get to the right spot. Okay. This is the org that I worked on, and let me bring up the lesson real quick.
Do you want to share your screen, Jeremy?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Whoops, wrong button. Okie doke. Can let me know if you can see.
Yes.
Can you see? Okay, I'm gonna make this a little bigger.
Perfect.
And, let's change this to the Trailhead. And what is the lesson again?
Sure, I'll walk you through each bit. How about that? So for the structure, why don't we? I'll open up the Trailhead badge, and then for each section, why don't I ask you to show us like what you built?
Sure, sounds great.
And that will help people with their homework. But let's try and avoid giving everybody the answers if we can.
Got it.
Just
Focus
on a business process perspective, tell the story, and have a practice at your demonstration skills, because then that will help other people to figure that out as well. I'll come off mute just to stay off camera just to save the bandwidth.
Okay.
Jeremy, thank you for doing this. In the future, when we do things like this, it would be really lovely if we can have more people sharing, because so far we've had Jeremy and Kat, and whilst we love them to pieces and they're doing a fantastic job, they might be feeling the burden a little bit. So it'd be good if we can spread that across everybody. So thank you, Jeremy. Okay, so when we started working on this the other day, we started with the Trailhead project, which is called build a data model for a recruiting app. So we created a custom object for reviews. Should we start with that?
Sure. Okay, so we'll go to setup, where we build all of our things, and under object, under object manager, and what I first did was I had created a new object, a new custom object. So I went here to create a new custom object called review. And here's the object. Without seeing now, Gemma, without seeing the lesson on the side, I'm not going to remember every step along the way.
Sure. How about I just ask you some questions then?
Great.
So in terms of obviously when you create a custom object, there's a certain field that ends up being created by default that always has to be there. What was the data type that you selected for this record, for this field?
So now there are a number of custom fields on this object that were created over the course of the lesson. Now I don't recall which was the first one, but so I know there were a number of pick lists, and I thought the pick lists were created later in the lesson, in the second lesson.
Sorry, Jeremy, would you mind just zooming in a couple of more times for us?
Oh, sure. Hold on a second.
That's perfect. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I have a number of custom fields on here, but many of these were built later in the later lessons.
Yeah, sure.
So the earlier ones were interviewer, job application, and I believe experience was one of the early ones.
Okay. What about any standard fields? Are there any standard fields that are included in the object?
Okay, so yeah, so the standard fields where it's created by, that's built as part of the, when the object was first created by, last modified by, and then the name. So those were some of the standard objects or standard fields that are part of the object.
Okay, and the name, what did you choose for the name? Is it a title or is it something else?
So here, so review name right here is the field for review name. And I think I screwed this one up because I chose a number, which I found confusing later. So instead of it saying, you know, the review is Jeremy's review, it just said review number 1, review number 2.
Yep. No, that's actually in line with what they want you to do on Trailhead. So that's good. All that is really is just a formality. It's the record name in Salesforce, which Salesforce always requires, and it confuses some customers that I work with as well. If people go, well, actually, I can't logically expect users to put something in for that. That's the kind of situation where you would choose to use an auto number and just put in like a reference number. Because all it is just, it's arbitrary. It's just there for Salesforce.
Okay. I would, if I was going to build this, I would also put in one more field that was not in here that would indicate something, the human element of it, only because when I went back and looked through my examples, I didn't know that if review 0 or 1 was, you know, reviewing the person Jeremy or the person Gemma or the person Samira. I didn't, you know, I had no way to know who it was tied to.
Okay, and when did you have that challenge? Was that when you were looking at another object perhaps, or?
It was later, once I was during the various levels of testing the functionality. You know, I would create a review, I would create a job posting, I would create try to answer the you know, fill in the values about how the interview went, and you know, the only thing that tied the review name to anything was this number, which didn't mean anything. That was just my confusion.
Okay, that makes sense. For those of you in the lesson, do feel free to come off mute and ask any questions and join in the discussion if you would like to. You're most welcome to. It doesn't have to just be me and Jeremy. If you want to ask anything or say anything, please feel free. So does everybody, do you understand what the difference is here between the auto number and the name as a data type? No. Okay. So why don't I explain it from the beginning? So when you create a custom object in Salesforce, there are certain fields that you get out of the box as standard. Those include the created date and the created by, which is which shows a combination of date, time, and person. But you also have the last modified by. You have an owner until you have a master detail relationship. That's just a key one to remember. If you create a master detail relationship, that the owner field ceases to exist on that object, because the owner is its parent, and the owner is the owner of the parent. You also have a name field, which is given as standard for every single object. Now, if you create an opportunity, you will be invited to enter an opportunity name, and it's mandatory, and you have to fill that in. Regardless of whether you put a period symbol or your own name or an X or a Z or something like that, you have to put something in that name field. Now, in terms of business logic, sometimes you would look at something like a review and think, okay, do I need to give this review a name? And you make a decision in your head. You weigh up whether it's going to be just an extra thing you have to explain to a user that actually doesn't really matter that much. In terms of it being a name, it has to be there in order for Salesforce to save the record, but it doesn't actually mean anything to a user. So Salesforce provides the functionality to create an automatically generated auto number, which Afshan has called out in the chat. She says that auto number is generated automatically. That is correct. And all it is it is an automated way, as Samira says in the chat. It is correct. It is. Good question, Jeremy. It is actually just a way. It's an automatic way of creating a name for the record. Now, Jeremy says, in this case, would the auto number serve as the record's primary key? This is where things get a little bit complicated, because it actually doesn't. The primary key for your record, if you open up any review record, the primary key is actually an 18-character ID that appears in the URL. So let's have a look at that. Now, and the primary keys will begin with different letters and symbols, depending on which object you're looking at. So, for example, let's have a look at the, I'm just squinting in at the moment. Yes, so you can see there's a long 18-character ID in the URL that we're looking at there, which starts with AO. And AO tells me it's a custom object. But that whole ID there, if you were to copy that and paste it onto the end of any Salesforce URL, if you're logged into your, that's the ID. That is the primary key. That's the primary key for that review record.
Okay.
So the reference number itself is just a name. It's just a title for that record. And really all it does functionally in the system is it gives you something to click on. That's all it does.
Okay. So right here.
Yes, gives you something to click on.
Okay. All right.
So Afshan says primary key can also be used to import data. Yes, it can. Another thing that can be used to import data is to create a text field and mark it as being an external identifier, because that allows you to do something called an upsert, which is if you find, which is where you basically load up a CSV file into the data importer, and you tell the importer, if you find a record with this external ID, then just update it, don't create it. Does that make sense? Yep. It helps you find data in the system. Does that feel better? Do you guys understand that difference between the reference number, the name, and the primary key? Cool. So you'll use that primary key if you're importing data. You will also use that primary key if you're integrating. But also, as a user and as an admin, I used to actually send links to people. So people would say, can you just download me this report? I'd be like, actually, no, here's a URL, click it. And it will take you to the right record. Okay. Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, so let's move on. So we've got that. What about your job posting sites? Can you talk us through your job posting sites object?
Sure. So I had to create another new custom object, and so I went to Home and then the Object Manager, and then chose Create Custom Object. Mm-hmm. And I created the object. I can't remember if it was job posting or job posting site, which was first.
So if you remember from our last session, we have job, we have position, and we have job posting site, and then job posting is the junction in between, isn't it?
Okay.
I think, so, yeah.
So here's the job posting site. And I did know that it was the data type was a text field, so that we could list. The idea was that you could list a variety of sites like Monster or Glassdoor or wherever, the various sites. That's what it was, the intention of what would be populating in this table or object, excuse me.
Sure.
And then the fields, and it would want me to allow reporting, I'm assuming, so we could at some future point do reporting on the number of sites that were being used. If you were a recruiter, you'd want to be able to report on the number of job sites you'd posted to, as well as some kind of metrics as to, did you post a lot to this site and were you getting good feedback? I'm assuming in a real world scenario, so you could decide, I want to keep posting on this one or not. This would give you the ability to report on the data you'd collect.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So then the fields and relationships, there was a description field. Well, first off, since the sites are going to be websites, they the custom field, one of the custom fields was job posting site, and that was defined as a URL. So that I'm assuming now, does the URL, if you define it as a URL field, does it automatically have a validation rule that it might look like some, HTTP colon something dot something?
So it wouldn't be a validation rule. It's actually because you've selected the URL data type. The Salesforce platform takes care of that validation for you. So if you tried to put something in that isn't a URL, it would just go, "What are you doing?"
Okay. So there's some automatic under the hood by definition of defining it as a URL field. There's something that would, either mask it or make sure that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and I apologize for everyone if I'm going out of order because I can't see the directions. I'm just following. Okay. So we have the job posting URL custom field and the status custom field, and that would be a pick list. It was defined as a pick list that included oh, where is my pick? The pick list must be coming from somewhere else. I thought there was a...
Yeah, so you have your junction object in the middle, which is the job postings, I think.
Where is it? Status, data owner, user.
Yeah, you have an approval status and a status of active. Yeah, that's the job posting.
The value set. And and
Let
later
me
we defined value sets. I thought the value sets felt to me similar to pick lists, but I guess they were pick lists not for a specific...
I'm so sorry. I know what you're talking about now. So you've clicked edit next to the field. If you cancel out and just click the name of the field, then you'll see the values. If you think about consider the values as being a related list. In order to see a related list, you've got to open up the object itself.
Okay.
You got it there.
Okay. So I knew that this was, I'm guessing, so that if you were using a variety of job posting sites in the real world application, I would imagine as you would say, okay, I'm going to use job posting sites 1, 2, and 3, and after a period of time, you might discover that job posting site 2 is not working for you, so you'd want to stop using it. But if you wanted to preserve your data integrity, you wouldn't want to delete that record because it would be tied to historical information. So you'd instead want to be able to deactivate it, and so this would give you the ability to say that record is inactive, and I'm assuming that would then could be used to prevent it from showing up on the list when people were assigning job postings. You wouldn't.
Yeah. If you wanted to get very cute, you could create an integration between Salesforce and the external site to say, if I change the status to inactive, that then automatically using that site's API will update that job posting to say that it's no longer active. That's if you want to get fancy with it.
Okay. Is this making sense so far? I want to make sure that everybody's following this.
It is for me. What about everyone else? Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. Let's go back to the details on. So then there was a later, and I'm jumping a tiny bit ahead because one of the later parts of the exercise wanted to delineate between technical job postings and non-technical job postings, and then there was also technical sites and non-technical sites. So that was one of the additional custom fields that was created, and here is technical site. What was interesting is it wasn't indicated as a item within the site field to say, you could choose the site as active or inactive or technical, non-technical. It was chosen as a Boolean option where you could just simply say technical site and check it as yes.
Yeah, yes or no. Is it a
So-
technical site?
So, logically it accomplishes the same thing, but does it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I could show you real quick what we did, what this was here. So it's a checkbox, so that's where it makes it's either an on or off. And then it was just called job post. It was, excuse me, it was a child. In my mind, I think of this as a child record of the parent. Excuse me, a child record for the parent record job posting site, but I guess it'd be a child object to the detail object to the master object of job.
Master.
Right?
Correct. Yeah. So actually, job posting site is a master to the job posting, and position is also a master to the job posting.
Okay. Okay. What's next?
Okay, what's next?
Does that make sense so far? All right. So within this job posting site, I believe there's a description field, which basically is just I'll show you. It basically just says what kind of thing this is, and it's a text area. I'm guessing this would be because instead of having for this job posting site object, you have a URL, which is not super descriptive, but you could have a description that would allow you to write down. Maybe it's a regional job posting site, or maybe it's a technical job posting site, or so that's what this field was for. And I thought that makes sense, since if you were as a user going to use this, you wouldn't want just the URL. You'd want to be able to put some clue as to why you were creating the connection to this job posting site.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So then you have the job posting itself, which was where we left things on Monday.
Okay.
I won't make you go through that again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So to find to create or find the next object, you would go to the object manager. And in this case, I needed to create a new custom object of job posting. So I created a new one. And there it is, job posting. And the data type on this job posting was auto number. And again, I understand that the auto number is sort of to automatically create some thing that's visible. I'm not a big fan of auto number, just because the number doesn't mean anything to me. I understand why it's done, but I find it confusing.
I just think about what would I want a user to fill in. If I don't want a user to fill in anything and I want to make it simple, I will put in a number and then just take it off the page layout because it's irrelevant.
Oh, maybe if I'd taken it off the page layout, that would probably make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I often do that with customers.
Okay.
If they don't need to know about it, it's not there.
Okay. So basically the object is job posting, and I was lazy and did not put in a description, which I should have, some kind of notes. And it's really, there's not much to this one. It's just an auto number field. And it doesn't really didn't encourage me to allow reports. Although I would kind of think that I would probably want to be able to report on it at some point.
Yeah, so it's purely because it's optional. So yeah, you would want to report on it. So I mean, I tend to always, there's two things I will usually click on by default. One is allow reports, one is track field history, because you never know when someone's going to want to track changes to what's been entered into fields.
Okay, well, I'm going to make that change then, because I think that.
Yeah, and with activities, that's when I start thinking about, well, would I ever need to email someone about this? Would I ever need to log a call about it? Would I ever need to set myself a task to remind me to do something about it?
Okay. Okay. So within the job posting custom object, there are there's two custom fields. There's the position, which is the job itself, which I think is sort of the key piece of data on the object, and then there's the what would you call it? Associated. It's the master detail. It's the child record. I believe it's the child record for the job posting site. So it says this position has been posted, on a specific location. And I was a little confused because I would assume that a position could have a one to many relationship with job posting sites, because a position could be posted in multiple places.
That's correct. So you're looking at the actual child right now. The child is the job posting.
Yep.
So the position is the parent, which can be posted a few times, and the site is where it's posted to. And if you think about when you look at the site, you want to see what jobs are posted there. And if you look at the position, you want to see where they're posted.
Okay. So if I were to go to, I didn't look closely to see how the object was set up to know that I could create a position and I could then say the position A has job posting site 1 and job site posting site 2 and job posting site 3 and so on. I didn't dig into that, but that would be my expectation.
Yeah. So that if you auto number it, then you would get 1, 2, and 3, but you wouldn't get 1, 2, and 3 per record per parent object. You would get 1, 2, and 3, and then the next position might be 4, 5, and 6, etc.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by it just being treat it as a formality. Treat it as I have to, if I want to open up this record, I've got to click on that reference number.
Okay. Can I ask one quick question then about that? So, in the case of a position that is posted, in like when I think about it from a purely database perspective, if I have a position and I have a job posting site, I would typically have a union table in between them that would say, you only have the position in your database once and the job posting site in there once, and you might have this position associated to 2 or 3 different posting sites, and that would be in the union table.
And that's what job posting is. Job posting is your union table.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
We call it. It's just called something different. It's referred to as a junction object. But yes, it's a union table.
Okay. I hope that everybody is not finding this confusing. I hope this is making sense.
I have a small question. Sorry for being an idiot here. Just the relationship between job posting site and the position one. Could you please reiterate once again, like with an example?
Okay, there you go, Gemma. All right, here's a job posting site.
Maybe if you open up the schema builder, Jeremy,
Sure.
it might make more sense.
Sure. Schema builder. Okay.
On the left, you get a whole bunch of objects that you can clear all, select all. So I would just clear everything off and just pull in the objects that you want. There you go. Job application, job posting. You got position as well.
Position. What were the other ones? Job posting site, job posting position.
Candidate.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I think there's candidate as well, isn't there?
I was thinking applicant, but no, candidate. No, I thought there was one.
Job application.
And so one more time?
Is it job application? Is that another one as well? Yeah, you got that.
Okay, I think that's all of them. Let me get us over here. Give me 1 second to bring that down so everybody can see it. Oh, I love schemas. I really do.
Much easier to see.
Okay, can everyone see this? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So, without looking at it deeper, I would think that the way these tables are structured, it really looks to me like position is the sort of the central table, just because it's connected to the most objects.
Yeah.
That's the way my database geeky head would look at it. So there, that's actually, can everybody see that all right? That to me actually makes more logical sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So, alrighty. So, like the way I would think of it logically is a position is created. So that's the core, and that position is going to get posted somewhere. Oh,
Can you
yeah,
zoom a bit?
Certainly. How's that? Is that a little better?
Yeah.
That right there.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's come through.
Tiny
now.
bit larger. Okay, so bear with. Okay, so you know, I tend to think of it from a normalized database perspective. So the core of this is a position. You create a position, and that position is going to get posted somewhere, and that is so where the the job posting site. And here's the union table between the position and the job posting site. So you would have one record on the job posting site, say monster.com, and one position, teenage tamer. And that teenage tamer, or excuse me, you might have multiple job posting sites, Monster, Glassdoor, and so on. And then that teenage tamer gets posted at Monster and Teenage Tamer, or maybe it only gets posted on Monster. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
On the flip side, we have job application and candidate. So you could have a candidate, say Jeremy is the candidate, and Jeremy might apply to multiple positions. And you can see here, can you guys see the line? There's a single line here, and there's like the little fork over here.
Yep.
That's a one-to-many relationship. That means there's one candidate for potentially many job applications. Okay, so one-to-many relationship, and that's a normalized mode for database structure. So one candidate, say Jeremy, and there might be, I might apply to more than one job. Okay, so the job application, I want to keep calling it a table, object. The job application object would contain information about the application and then tie back to the candidate. So you can see your candidate right here is a lookup. So it's going to pull that information for the candidate that populates the job application field from the candidate object. Does that follow?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Great. And then going back from job application candidate to position, I think of position as the central object in this structure. We have a one-to-many relationship from position to application, because for the position of teenage tamer, you might have multiple people applying. So you can have one position right there. I'm sorry, the pop-up thing keeps, see the single line and then the little fork in the other end, which means one-to-many relationship between position and job application. And if you look up here, there is because it's a master, position being the master and job application being the detail, in database parlance, parent and child, position field is populated, but it gets its information from position. Where is it? It should be position over here on the position object. Which is the field? Created last amount of owner.
Related position. You've got a circular there. That's the next part of the homework.
Oh
there.
yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. So right here. Okay, and that to me is a little confusing. I don't quite follow that. So maybe you could explain that to us.
Oh, sure. So, so within Salesforce, you have the ability to relate an object to itself up to 9 times. And as part of this Trailhead badge for building a data model, you are required to do that. So Jeremy has created a lookup field from position to position to show positions that are related to each other. Business cases, let me just think about that. In terms of this, it's being positioned as she would like each recruiter to be able to identify other open positions that require similar skills or have similar job descriptions, so that people can kind of determine appropriate roles for candidates. So even if this candidate is not successful in their job application, you at least can see other similar positions that are related to this one.
Okay.
So you handle that by building another lookup field on the position object, which looks up to the position object. And then we use something called record types, which this homework is aiming to introduce you to.
Okay.
So shall we move through to that? Do you want to carry on explaining? Do you want to finish off explaining this part, and then we'll go on to the next step?
I feel like this is like, to me, this kind of makes sense the way it is. There are a couple additional fields that were created in the position object later,
Mhm.
to allow delineation about the position, so they could say, okay, does the position require certain items? I felt like programming languages, education, and things like that, and I felt that was sort of with the aim towards, was it a technical or a non-technical role? And then
Mm.
also the typical things you would put in it, where like salary ranges and things like that.
So just thinking outside of the Trailhead module now, obviously for job postings, you have job posting sites, you've got a checkbox that says, is this a technical site or not? If you wanted the system to figure out whether a position was a technical position or not, and therefore should be posted on a technical site, can you think of any solutions for how you could do that?
Well, if you wanted to automate it, I would imagine if you had, because there are in some of the fields there is one of the fields that a series of pick lists for languages, operating systems, and so on. And I suppose you could put like a validation rule that says, if one of these things is true, then automatically check the box technical. And somebody would have to have a discussion as to what is that sort of turning point. So if you put in there a programming language, I could see that as being listed as it's a technical position. However, if you listed it as an operating system facility with an operating system, I don't know that that would necessarily constitute a technical job. At least that's how I would look at it.
But you could actually decide on that criteria outside of Salesforce first, and then you could potentially build fields in there. So for example, if the skill set is, an operating system, if they require certain certain subject at degree level, or education level, they need that kind of their major needs to be in a technical degree of some sort, then you could actually use formula fields. You could use a formula field to return a checkbox, yes or no, is this technical? And a validation rule, remember what validation rules do? Validation rules prevent you from saving a record if certain criteria are not met. So the automation you described is actually what we're going to look at next week, where you could have a box ticked automatically based on that criteria. But you could actually also create a formula field that returns that checkbox based on that criteria as well.
The other use case I was thinking about is, if a position was being posted, I would imagine the hiring manager would be the person describing and defining the position and saying this is a technical role, and submitting that to HR or whoever, and that would be who'd be. So if you were the hiring manager, you would be telling me, the HR person, this is a technical position, and you'd simply check the box.
Yep.
It struck me as probably I would think that as being a more accurate way to determine if it's technical than building a set of complex rules. That's just my feeling.
Yes, I think that would make sense for sure. Okay, so are there any questions amongst the room? If you don't understand this, now is the time to shout. And there are no such thing as stupid questions. Any question at all that you might have, if you've got any doubt in your mind about understanding this, please don't hesitate to ask. If you don't want to speak, you can ask in the chat. It's fun to imagine. Kat, you crack me up.
Does the schema builder like this make everybody happy like it makes me happy? I just look at this and it makes me happy.
It's not rainbow, but sure.
Okay, confession. I used to have like a 4 foot by 4 foot huge schema builder on the wall behind my desk at one of my jobs, and it's huge one. And yes,
wow.
I can own it.
Oh, that's really cute. In Salesforce though, it'd be out of date the minute you print it off.
Yep. Okay. moving on.
Amazing. So Jeremy, tell us a little bit more about this. I mean, we talked about the position relationship, didn't we? Did you learn anything else from creating that related position field?
So the related position field, I was a little confused as to how, I still am not like super solid on why you'd want a self-referencing table.
It is a weak okay, so I can explain why in a nutshell. It's a weak use case, but the reason that it's there is so that we can teach you record types.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Okay. What I do like about creating these schemas is thinking of it in terms of how do you structure a normalized database and normalized data. And that's been one of the challenges for me in moving to a Salesforce model, because the object contain, when you open up the object and you see the XML of the object, you can see both the definition of the object over and over again for each row. And that it's harder for me to like wrap my head around that. So creating these objects and then seeing how they connect together. So like seeing how there's a lookup between, like here, the lookup for created by, that's like automatically done by whoever the user was that logged in when the table was created, which in this case was me. Or if Kat was creating it, it would be her, or if it, so on. And I think that's important when you have a production org, because if there are multiple people working on it, you want to be able to see who created that object, because Kat may have created it 3 years ago, and then Gemma may have made changes to it, and then I may have made further changes to it, and you can see who it was created by in this field here, created by Kat, and then last modified by say Gemma. And I know when I was doing some other work, that was frequently helpful, because I needed to know why it was changed, so I could go, oh, Gemma changed, and I could go and talk to you and say, why was this field changed, and you could explain it to me. I think, does anybody else have any other questions? I mean, I could keep yammering on, and I don't want to take us far afield.
Can't we check that with the log history? Yes, Afshan, there is in settings, you will be able to see there is a thing called View Setup Audit Trail under Setup. And that will tell you, so sorry, that's the app launch. Yeah, that's right, Jeremy. So if you go to View Setup Audit Trail, that's the one. Have a look at that. Tells you exactly what's been changed by whom and when. It doesn't track changes to data. It tracks changes to metadata. Remember the difference between the two? Your metadata is I changed a field. Your data is I changed the account. I changed a contact record called Jeremy Fink.
Yep. So, and I know that this kind of stuff for when you're dealing with updates to an org, when you're dealing with tools like GearSet, it's very helpful, because it will show you who changed an object or a custom field within an object and when.
Yeah, just try not to get too emotional about it.
most of the time, that okay. All right. Okay. Back to the object. Oh, I left my schema manager.
One thing else it will tell you as well, it will tell you if you've ever logged in as another user and who did it and when. Oh. And that was one of my first jobs as an admin, was to check who had logged in as whom and when, in order to ensure that, if there were any questions about data being changed, that we could actually investigate further. It was a compliance thing, a compliance report that we had to submit monthly to the compliance team.
Okay. All right. So did we go through the creation of all the 5 objects? I feel like
so just to summarize then, so you created a lookup field that would relate to a position. Something else that we haven't covered, could you just take us back to your position record, position object, and then click edit on your related position field?
Okay, hold on a second. Position Fields and relationships.
Look at you, proper know your way around. Love this.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Position.
Click on, yeah. Let's see.
Okay.
And scroll down for me. So you'll notice something else is here that we haven't talked about yet, and this is a lookup filter. Now, what this enables you to do is to provide an extra level of validation on lookup fields. You've got the ability to make fields mandatory via page layouts, via making it required at the field level. You can also use validation rules to make them to prevent users from saving records if certain criteria are not met. But what lookup filters enable you to do is something slightly different, and it enables you to actually trim down and really focus on the records that you want users to relate this to. So for example, in this exercise, you are asked to ensure that the position is in the same department. And what you're effectively doing here is defining what is a related position. How do we know if two positions are similar? Well, actually, it's the most simplest use case, but by definition in this Trailhead badge, they're saying that the two positions need to be in the same department. But also the position record ID is not equal. Oh, okay. And then in the second criteria, we're actually saying that you can't relate a position to itself.
So I actually was thinking about this one, and the way that it made sense to me is within a development department. So we can have multiple positions within a development department. Okay, so the dev department might have programmers and QA and senior programmers and so on. But in the positions, for a position, you don't want to have a QA analyst and a QA analyst because it's the same position, and you don't want to treat that as two different positions. So you can, if you're having related roles, you can have within development, you can have a QA analyst and a senior QA analyst. So those are related positions, but not the same position.
Correct.
So they're related.
Heidi?
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say you're right. I agree with you. It's actually keeping the database tidy, and keeping a simple, minimized list of positions, and then being able to create variants of those positions by kind of by other means.
So Avshan wants to know if record ID is the primary key here.
Yes. So remember earlier when we looked at the 18 character ID that's in the URL, that is the record ID.
So my question would be, at least I think that actually answers where I was going next, because if we have a QA analyst and there's two openings for QA analyst, even though they're both called QA analyst, they're going to have two different record IDs. So they're going to have QA analyst with the 18 character alphanumeric string, and then a second QA analyst with a different string. So those two positions, which are the same name, would not run afoul of this second condition because they have different record IDs.
Yeah. And if I was going to productize that, I would actually add an expiry date to the position. I would say, what's the effective date of this position, and then what date does the position expire? And I would probably factor that into my lookup.
Okay.
But anyway, so what you're doing here is you're limiting what records a user can look up to from that position. So another example might be if you had a custom object with a field called customer, which is looking up to an account, and then you added a filter that said only allow you to relate to accounts where type equals customer.
Okay. So
Ashton says our records ID is going to be the same because related position is look up to the position record for one object. Record ID going to be the same. No, so they're two different positions. They are just related to each other. And what we're saying in the filter is that you can't relate two positions. You can't relate one position to itself. Does that answer your question? Okay. So Okay, so we've covered that. Let's have a look at the next bit then. In the next bit, so we've done that. We've created a self relationship. The final thing we have to do is create our custom recruiting fields, which are happening on. So that's your core competency field on the, and your leadership skills fields on the review object, which you've already covered very kindly. We have the recommend for hire checkbox as well. We have the reason recommended. We have a lookup for interviewer. Which object is that looking at? That's looking at, oh, interviewer, complete different object. Okay. And then we have a master detail relationship for job application, which is happening on the, is it happening on the review? Yes.
So the interviewer, can I throw in something about the interviewer for a moment?
Yeah, go for it.
So I was thinking about this in terms of, you have a hiring manager, so maybe the manager of development, and then the HR. So the HR person posts the job provided by the hiring manager, but there might be a number of people interviewing the candidate. So you might want to have multiple interviewers for that job posting. And so I might be interviewed by 3 different people, and each of those people might put on here their review. Somebody might say, I like this, or I don't like that, or I rate this a 3, but somebody else might rate it a 4. And so then when the person's been interviewed a number of times, you could see there would be a review for each of those interviewers. And then I'm assuming, person 1 might recommend for hire. Well, they're all going to recommend for hire, but let's just, for the sake of discussion, some are and some are not. And then I would assume the hiring manager could go through these various reviews that took place over time and make a decision based on each person's recommendation, based on experience and their comments, or their leadership skills and comments. And I can go to the object itself so we can see, if you like. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense.
Would it be helpful for people to see the front end view of the review?
I think so. Let's take a minute.
I hope I did one.
You did.
Okay. So there's only one review. So, darn it.
Unfortunately.
I work at this kind of late. I don't think of who's going to see these. So I apologize to everyone.
No, I love it. I have loads of fun with data in Salesforce. Years of being difficult, acting rudely, and punching people in.
My kids are watching a lot of How to Train Your Dragon, and there's a lot of that in it. Okay, so
I mean, punching people in the fist.
Okay, so in this case, there's a review. Let's collectively create another review. I find that to be a much more useful
and then maybe we could show the related positions as well.
Okay.
Maybe.
So I'm going to go back to reviews. So we have a review. So we're going to create a new review. Okay. And see, this is the reason why I actually didn't dig the number thing, because to me, when I started searching for it for interviewers, this did nothing for me. I don't know if this is reviewer Kat or Gemma or Jeremy. It's a number. So that was moving on.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't, this isn't going to let me create a new one. And I'm not going to spend the time. So we'll just use me again. All right. And the position is for teenage. Now, this is going to be a little confusing because I'm the only person in this system right now. And so it's going to look like 2 interviews by the same person for the same position. Okay. In reality, you would have a second person here in this field interviewing for, say, the same position. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're going to save it. So here's the new record. So within the job applications, again, this value doesn't mean anything to me, but I happen to know that's the teenage, that's for this new person. Okay. And so I'm given a choice, but we've created these custom, these custom fields within the review object. so this core competencies, I think, is supposed to be a 1 to 5 scale.
It's a score, isn't it? Yeah, I would have call it core competency score or something.
Yeah, and I also think that the challenge here is, tying the core competency comments. There's no definition of there's no place where we said which core competency are we talking about here. It's below. So I would probably, if it was me, have listed, maybe core competencies and broken it out amongst what they are, because that does happen later.
Actually, I would have done it as another custom object, and I would have said, here, what are the core competencies for this position? And actually, I might create, if my organization, let's say they have core competencies that are related to their values, I might create a bank of core competencies and then have a junction in between. I mean, I'm loath to suggest more custom objects, but you could have a junction in between there that says these are the core competencies that relate to this position.
Well, there is actually in the position. If you give me 30 seconds, I'll put the position. Where is it? Oh goodness! Just a second.
And that's the thing. There are multiple ways you can cut it. As Kat says, I mean, you could use checkboxes. You could use custom objects. It's all about what's easiest for the user.
So with so within the position, there was a place where we created some delineated items about a position. I believe it was there. No, there was a place. There was a place where you could create you could list certain skills and then rate them. And I think it was in the interviews.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh goodness.
Okay, that's all right.
Right. Well, anyhow, there was a place, and that would have made sense to me to tie those items back to the position. Let me go back to the position, because if you had said in the interview you were going to rate the candidate on a QA position, and you were going to say the QA position must have attention to detail, .NET familiarity, and so on, that you would want those same things on the review, because that would be a lookup field from the position to the review. Because then does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So for all we have here is just core competencies.
You've got teenagers, haven't you?
I do. Okay, leadership skills. I'm going to give myself a 1. Okay. Experience. Oh yeah. Okay. Recommended for hire. So, and this is where the interviewer might say, I recommend this guy for hire. Okay. So now we have, does that make sense to everybody? We have another review of the interview. So somebody is interviewed, well, me, for the job position of teenage tamer. And again, so you can see this is why I'm not wild about this and this, because I would expect as a human being, I would want to know who was the interviewer. So was it Gemma or Jeremy, and who were they interviewing? They were interviewing Kat or Samira.
So question for everybody in the group, how could we make those hovers more useful? Looking at what you've learned so far.
God, we learned that. See, this is the reviews object.
So one is, yes, you could put a name. Absolutely. You could go back and change the record name from being an auto number to being a title. And you could say, you could automate the setting of that interviewer by perhaps saying, bearing in mind, if you create, if you did that, you could actually have 50 Jeremy Finks in the system as a junction, as an interviewer object, and therefore make it quite hard to look up.
I thought there was a way. I can't remember how, but I
Shoot people in the fist. Yes.
yeah,
So
that would be scary.
what kind of layout would we configure?
Compact page layout for reviews.
Yeah. So let's have a look. If you change the compact layout, let's see if that does the trick.
Wait a second. I'm lost here. Hold on.
Check the chat.
There we go. And then in here, can't I tweak it so that when that fly out?
So you wouldn't do it in here. Where would you do it?
Oh, okay. All right.
So you had it right the first time. You're in the compact layout.
Okay. And here I would want to put probably, since it's the review, I'd want to know who the interviewer was and probably the job application. I don't know that I would need anything else in the compact view.
We can't see what you're doing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right. It's caught
I
up now.
apologize.
Not to worry. Yeah, so you've gone to create a new one, right?
Say again?
So you've gone to create a new compact layout, right? It was frozen. Yeah, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry.
Okay. And let me know if you guys can see it. What I did, I apologize. I thought you could see.
No, we can see it now. Don't worry.
Okay. So what I did is I went to the object manager. I chose review. I chose compact layouts. And at first I couldn't figure it out. But, you know, Samira told me you guys told me I have to create a new one. Created a new compact layout. And I'm just calling it review compact layout. And this is what's going to populate that little flyout when I hover over the link. So I really don't want a lot of information in that. All I really care about is who was doing the interview and which is the job application. I'm already in the review, so I should already know who the person is. The person being interviewed. So that's what I would like to do. And now I have to assign that to.
Well remembered, absolutely.
And I think that's just the standard. There. And now if I go back here and refresh it, I should, when I hover over that flyout, I should see the name and the interviewer. Please let it be right. Wait a second. Oh, curses.
That's annoying. If you switch to classic, does it work?
Say that again?
If you switch to classic, does it do it?
Oh, that's a good question.
It might just be running slightly late.
I'll switch to classic. 30 seconds here.
That's annoying.
Come on.
That's really annoying. So if you look in your recent items, you'll see it there. Yeah. And hover over your.
Oh gosh, where is it?
Yeah, I know.
There it is, right there.
Right. Okay. No, we didn't do it. So we didn't do it in the right place, or something's gone awry with the assignment.
Okay. So
have you saved it? Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to the top of this for a second. So the review. Okay. So the review object and the compact layouts. And here is my review compact layout.
And that has been assigned because it now says it's primary.
Okay. And basically I've added the interviewer and the job application. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This should, when I hover over the the what's the first field, the one that ties it all together? When I hover over the
interviewer,
the link, the 000, the auto number, the review name.
What we've just done is we have created a compact layout for the review object. We now need to create a compact layout for the interviewer object.
I do.
Mm.
Okay, so let's go.
So I bet when you look at a related review, you'll get that beautiful layout that you just had.
Wait, when I look at the review, hold on.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to Lightning because okay.
I know. I can't even.
Is this everybody? Is it updating for everyone?
Yeah. So yes, it is. So because you're hovering over the interviewer, you're seeing the interviewer compact layout, which has nothing in it. But if you hover, so you need to go and configure that because it's on the interviewer object.
Oh, wait. So if I go back to here and hover, should I see the...
You won't see it for the related list. That's where it gets complicated. For this list,
Curses.
it's where it gets complicated. But is review, is it a master for anything? If you look at related, where it says related, are there any objects there?
Nope.
Okay, don't worry then. So let's go and configure this on the interviewer.
Okay. There we go. Interviewer, compact layout, create a new one. All right.
Are people finding this helpful, by the way, this discussion? I think it's frozen. There we go. We're caught up now.
Okay. All righty. So,
so that's why you're not seeing it because you've got nothing in the selected fields.
Okay. So for the interviewer, I would want to know who the interviewer is, because that should give me their name or them name and probably the position, so we know what they're interviewing for. Does everybody see that I've moved those two available fields over to the compact layout? Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. So save that, and I need to assign that. Okay. Save that. Cross your fingers. Please work. Oh, goodness. There we go.
There you go. And you can tell as well, because obviously your compact layout is what's shown in the highlights as well, the highlights panel for the interviewer. So if we go back to that review, we should hopefully see that hover appearing correctly. Oh,
curses. Wait, look, there's part of it.
There you go. There's part of it.
Hold on a second. Let me...
They're just taking a moment.
Make it just for a second. There we go.
There you go. So you got the name straight away. And the position straight away.
Okay.
Do you know what I might do to enhance the customer experience for this review is I might create a formula field that just pulls through that name into a text and just says, this is the interviewer.
That substitute where it says interviewer, substitute this value for the name, even though...
Yeah, because actually, if you look at the data model here, the interviewer isn't actually the employee. The interviewer is actually a relationship between an employee and a position.
That seems a little weird.
Yeah. But I suppose it's just to prove the concept in a way. It's just from my perspective that I completely understand and accept that user experience is counterproductive or counterintuitive, rather.
Well, it's a good start, though. I think it's a good start for the exercise, and
Yeah.
Okay.
So Okay, so that's good. That's answered that question.
Okay.
So I think so that's the end of that badge. Once you've built that data model in place and you've built those objects, you put your fields in, you've done your layouts and so on, then actually that's when you can get your confetti for that project. The second project is around customizing the user interface. So there is a tab for the review object, which I've seen that you've already built, so we don't have to dwell on that for too long. And then there's an object-specific quick action. Let's have a look at that.
Object-specific quick action.
Mm-hmm. And this is to create a new job application.
Oh, job application. Okay.
And I believe that this is actually on the candidate object.
Okay. So here I'm in the candidate object. Now, I don't quite follow the legacy candidate number. I think that's supposed to be like, if this is the applicant applying for something, I don't know that I would necessarily know what that is. I suppose if you were the hiring manager or the HR person and I sent another application, you in theory, I suppose, could see, oh, Jeremy is already in the system and look it up and my number might be, but again, I didn't follow that.
I feel like that might be a different thing. It might be if you were, another use case for that would be if you were migrating from another system and you were sunsetting that system and moving everybody into Salesforce, then you perhaps might put in a legacy candidate number as an external ID. And then, yeah, and you're right, actually, it's whether or not they've been through that process with you before you switched over to Salesforce. It's a way of managing cutover.
Okay. So here's something else that I found, and this is something you taught us a couple of lessons ago. As you work through this new candidate field, it tabs me back and forth, which, left, right, on the two columns, but it didn't actually make logical sense to me. I would have probably had the lessons suggested. I probably would have reordered this thing so that it did, first name, last name, then street address, 1, 2, city, state, zip.
Let me show you a trick. If you cancel out, just click on your candidate C0000. What you want to do is go and edit the page layout.
Oh, there was a thing about that. Hold on, where was it?
Yeah. So if you go to your cog and click edit object, and then go to your candidate page layout, you can change your tab order. So if you scroll down, and it's in the section itself. So if you scroll back up slightly, there is a section for contact information. And if you move your mouse to the right-hand side and slightly up a bit, to the right and then slightly up, you will see another spanner appears for section properties. You can change the order. So if you want to go top down, you can. If you want to go left, right, you can.
Okay. So what's interesting about this is it actually jumps, and I remember seeing this, but I didn't read it closely. But I know that when you create a new candidate, what it does is it actually jumps first name, street address, last name. So it's actually going left, right.
Okay.
I was actually inclined to just move I was going to just take and rearrange the fields.
You can do that. Yeah, for sure. You can do that. Something that's interesting is in the latest idea exchange round of prioritization, they announced that they're going to look into building standard field data types of address. So you don't have to create all these address 1, address 2, city, state, zip, and county and country. Sorry, they're going to potentially open up the ability for you to create a new custom field of type address, which is formatted the same way as you would have on the account object. And I thought that was quite exciting, but it will be a long time coming yet. Salesforce is very specific about how some things, they can't always guarantee when new features are going to come out.
So I thought this layout makes more sense. personally. So if we go back
The
here,
interesting thing is as well, when you start doing this for an end user or a customer and you're very happy with your page layout and all the sections you've got, you know, the first time you play it back to a customer, they go, can you move that there? And can you move this there? And can I have a section, get rid of that section and change that section to this? And you're just like, all my hard work made sense to me.
yeah, I like this. I assume other people have had the luck to work with a good business analyst who has some experience in human factors and, you know, tell you, oh, you know, it's more convenient if it goes from left to right or top down, or, you know, or the OK button is, everybody expects the OK button to be in the lower right hand corner. So I don't know, I trust in other people to make those calls. So now we go back here and create a new candidate. Where is it? New candidate.
Did you refresh your page?
I didn't refresh my page because that legacy number should be gone. Does this make sense to everybody, what we're doing and why? Bueller?
We still have 15 people, so that's good. No one's walked out yet.
Okay. All right. So, oops, sorry. I went in the wrong place. Hold on. Here. New. Okay. Good. Okay, great. So that legacy number is gone, which we want. So
Yeah, you're frozen again, but we'll catch up. Don't worry.
Here that it's frozen. I'm okay.
Oh, 14 now.
Uh-oh. I'm sorry.
Okay, sometimes people get kicked because they lose connection. So is it tabbing how you want now?
It is.
Okay, that's good.
It is. It went first name, last name, email, phone number, and then mobile, which I don't know, I guess. Yeah, you know, I probably would have put phone number, mobile under. I would have probably delineated phone number as like, you know, something to delineate the difference between mobile and phone. There you go, Kat. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, the Hadi Arcone Street, I like that one. Okay.
Yes. So yeah, obviously, I mean, I don't know many people who still have landlines at home other than for the internet.
Okay. Does this make sense for everyone? It's a street. It's a relatively common street name. I don't actually know if it's in Tel Aviv. If there's one in Tel Aviv. Okay.
Natasha, I live around the corner from Hayaka.
Yeah. Okay. So here. And then you can say, you can put in your education. So, you know, whatever it is. Here, I'm going to promote myself. No, I don't need to be.
Ma.
That's better. We need
I know what that means. My first boyfriend was from Israel, and he was always shouting that up at his mum.
Yeah. Okay. So, there.
So,
sorry. Wait, Kat, didn't you just finish your PhD or something like that? All right. Put this in there. Okay. There we go. Master Cat.
Woohoo!
Okay.
So you now have an action, right? On the candidate.
New job app right there. You see it, everybody? So that was Natasha, the master's, it was an education field. So MA was for masters.
Oh.
Okay, so master's, PhD. Well, yeah, okay. So the whole reason why we got into this, and I'm sorry for our digression, was we created a quick action field on the candidate. So when you would create a new candidate in the system, you would be given this quick action up here, new job app, because if you're going to create a new candidate, the whole reason you would be doing it in theory is because they're applying for a job. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And in the next couple of weeks, we will look at flow, and flow would be a nice way to streamline that process so that you could say, you know, I've got a new candidate, and you could go through and fill out that information on a screen and click next, and then fill out the information about the job application, then click next, and have it guide you through a process, and then have it write to the database afterwards at the end of that process. That's what Flow does.
Okay.
But anyway, slight digression.
Okay. I actually kind of thought of this as the front end version of when we're doing the back end and we do creating custom fields and we create save and new instead of just save. I kind of looked at this as the front end equivalent of that.
Mm-hmm.
We've created the candidate, and now the next thing is create the job app for that candidate.
Yep.
Do you want me to?
No, go for it. Go for it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, Kat, you're going to be a super sales rep, or you're applying for the super sales rep. Unless you want to be a teenage tamer. I have 2. No? Okay. Okay. So within here, it automatically created the job application. I bet if we go to that, hopefully it will automatically populate it with all of your information. So we go back here, job applications. There's, again, show me.
Yeah, so that's because you're on the recently viewed tab. You can change the fields that are on there using search layouts, which is another option on the custom object.
This would be a great place for another compact layout for job applications, because again, this app 000 it tells me nothing.
Yeah, so you couldn't use compact layouts here, but you would use search layouts here, but actually the best thing that you can do right now is to actually just use a list view and pin it.
Oh, okay.
And you use search layouts to influence what fields are shown on the recently viewed version of that tab.
How do I do that?
You go to the job applications object.
Oh, okay, hold on.
So if you click your cog at the top and go to edit object.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, the gear, not the cog. Was it job application we were looking at?
Yes, it was. Yep,
job
job
on the left-hand side, you've got an option called, that's it, job applications. If you scroll on the left, you've got a section called search layouts. It's another useful trick for you. Search layouts influence what you see under this recently viewed list here.
Nope.
No, so if you go to the object, you remember where you were before, where you were changing the job application object? Yep. On the left, you've got search layouts, which is near the bottom. That's it. And then if you find you've got the default layout, edit that. That's where you can add in useful stuff.
Okay, so probably the candidate and the position would be the ones I would care about. Okay,
anything else? Status?
Anyone?
Stage?
I guess we'll put status.
Okay, and save. And then if you go back to your other tab and refresh it.
I'm not. Oh, there, that's good. Okay.
So and that is done in the back end, because what you've done there is effectively just change what people see when, like by default, when you click on a tab, you get this recently viewed. So it calls upon this search layout that's in the background. And if you've not added anything to your search layout, because Salesforce doesn't do that by default, you have to go and change it yourself, then you just get the name. But then if you change where it says for recently viewed, that's when you can change your list view. So if you click all, this is now the point, and just to confuse matters, where if you want to change what fields are shown here, you have to click the gear to the right-hand side and change your list view. Where it says select fields to display. When you change the search layout, it's like a one-time thing.
So now what is interesting here for me is this candidate, again, I would prefer to have the candidate's actual name, but I would imagine I would have to go into the candidate object and change something
So for this instance, I would create a formula field that basically goes and gets that candidate's full name and returns it as text.
Okay. And I assume if I were to, we were talking earlier that if I made the candidate name as the key linking field, the challenge is if there's William Anderson, there might be multiple William Andersons, and I don't want that as this controlling linking field.
Correct. And actually this is where, you know, there are some Mr. Anderson. It's where there are some it's where there are some odd quirks in the Salesforce platform, and it's only through bitter experience that you kind of know that. So like, I mean, on this tab, as you say, I would expect to hover over the candidate and see the pop-up as you would if you're reviewing a record. I happen to know that you can't do that on this tab. So that's why I end up, that is ultimately why people come up with workarounds like building formula fields, so that you can at least display that on a list view, or that you can display it in an email template, etc.
Okay. Does this make sense so far?
Can you imagine if we were having this discussion 7 weeks ago?
No, cannot.
So the fact that if everybody's able to follow, it's Kat said 7 weeks ago I'd be like, it's for selling things. Yeah. Yes. But you know, if you're able to follow this discussion, then that actually says a lot about everything that you've been learning this last 7 weeks, because it is a lot to take in, especially if people are new to this and don't have an IT background. So, you know, don't feel like, I mean, there are obviously in every class there are varying degrees of experience. So if we're not making sense at all, that's okay. Just tell us so that we can help you understand better. Okay, so your quick action. So you've created a new job application, right?
Yep.
That's been done. Then the next thing that you're tasked to do is to customize the page layout, which you have done on the review. So you've changed the order. Then the next task was to create a custom candidate record page, which was a Lightning page. Do you want to show us what you did there?
Sure. Okay. So
to do that, we have to click the candidates tab, don't we?
Oh, I've gotten the habit of going back to the object manager every time. I know that we can shortcut it by going from the front end. I find it,
yeah.
I don't know. In my mind, I have them separated into two entirely different things so that I know how to get. I know there's multiple ways to get to things. This is the way I keep going. So.
And that's perfectly fine.
So in the page layout, we, choose the object candidate, and then from within there go to page layouts and my candidate page layout. And I know that we can create multiple ones, but we're just going to mess with this one for now. I used to think that this page was really confusing. There's just so much stuff on it. It's still pretty confusing, but a little bit less so. Okay, so what we had, Gemma, I don't see the instructions, so I'm trying to remember all the things that were changed on here. I know that we created sections.
So this is a page layout for the record, and what the Trailhead badge wants you to do next is to actually change the Lightning page, and this is a new concept that we haven't explored together yet. So remember, when you view a candidate, you've got like a framework for the screen. And then there is a tab where you can look at the details, and you affect you affect what's shown on the details side by changing the page layout in the back end. Exactly, you clicked on exactly the right thing. So this is where you change the framework. You change whereabouts on that screen does the detail page appear. Is it a tab? Is it where do your related lists go? Where do you put your activity timeline? Where do you put any hover links on, etc., etc.? So, so this is where we looked at. So this is where you come when you want to make changes. And on the left-hand side, there are the concepts of Lightning pages that that actually conform to certain templates. So for the structure of this page, on the left-hand side, you've got all of your standard components that Salesforce has built for you and allows you to drag onto the page and customize as you wish. Then if you keep scrolling, you will have any custom components. That's when you get fancy developers to write little components to do things for you. And then custom managed is where you've actually installed a package where somebody has built those fancy components as part of that package, and you can't change them, but you can put them on the page. And this was key because remember when we talk about this switching between Classic and Lightning? Lightning has a different architecture. Lightning is an event-driven architecture, which means if you click on this, that will happen. If you click on that, that will happen. Whereas, and a lot of what happens with Lightning happens within your browser. So if your browser is all clogged up with lots of cookies and history and stuff, it can slow things down. In the old world, everything was server-side. So when you added a field, you would go through a logical process. This page would be displayed, then you click next, and this page would be displayed, then you click next. And automating things and having pop-ups meant that you needed to write custom JavaScript in order to get that to happen. And you effectively had this event-triggered activity happening based on data that was being stored in a database elsewhere and then writing back to your browser. So, you know, there are multiple reasons why they've done this. It's actually proved to be very beneficial because the user experience is much better. And the result, the net result, is Lightning record pages and a component-based model. So rather than just having a web page with the same layout, which is your tabs across the top, your sidebar down the left, you've got your, when you click on a tab, you can see a list view or a search layout. When you click on a record, you have the detail of the record with all the fields on it, and you have all the related lists underneath. And whenever you throwing things, Gemma. And when you look at that, you're querying a database through your browser. What you're actually doing is your browser is rendering that information, and then you can interact with it more instantaneously. So on the left-hand side, sorry, what that means is that when you create a record page, you get to choose like how you want it laid out. So Jeremy, could you click on where it says template and it says header and right sidebar on the right hand side, about halfway down the section on the right, you've got a button there that says change. We're not going to change it. I just want to prove the model. So here you can choose how do you want your layout to work. And notice that whichever layout you apply, it actually also automatically works on your phone as well. It's completely responsive. And what that does is creates regions for you so that you can drag and drop different components into those regions and create all your own pages and give a completely customized experience for both phone and desktop access to Salesforce. So let's come out of this because we don't want everyone to fail their Trailhead badges. As you can see, we've got the header and a right sidebar, and then you've got the main section, which is there. So what Jeremy's done here is he's dragged his recent items. There's a header, which is your highlights panel. Jeremy, can you show us on the left where you can find the highlights panel?
Let's see here.
And it's in alphabetical order, just letting you know. There you go. So if you pick that up, obviously if you click it, it will tell you off. You've got to get used to click and drag. So if you click and drag, then you as soon as it turns green, you can drop it into a region. You can drop it into a region as many times as you want. I wouldn't recommend it. Just once will do. But then you can change certain properties about that as well. Then if you click into the main area, where it says related and details, what you're looking at now is the order of tabs. I mean, personally, I hate having related as the first tab. I really hate it. I'm the kind of person who will click on a record and I just want to see what's there. From the reason it's been defaulted is actually by design, because it's going on the principle that you're not always creating a record the first time, and that you know, if you own a set of accounts, for example, or a set of opportunities, the thing you're going to be most interested in is what's the latest stuff that's happened with that. So, and most of that activity happens in the related lists. So it makes logical sense. It's just, for me, it's personal preference. I like to open it, look at the fields. So where you see details there, Jeremy, can you just click where you see all the fields? That's where your page layouts are coming from. So when you go into the page layout and you drag fields around, which is where Jeremy was a moment ago, all this page is doing is just saying, go and get this page layout and we're going to render it here. That's all it's doing. So if you want to change the position of fields, if you want to make fields required, if you want to change the order in which your related lists appear, if you want to add related lists to a record, then you would do that on your page layout. And then in this record at Lightning App Builder and this Lightning record page, this is where you would tweak the sorts of things that you can do. You would tweak the order in which they appear. Jeremy, could you click on related for me?
Yes.
I want to show you something really cool. Now, if you're the sort of person who likes clicking on tabs, great. You know, you can work with a business analyst and figure out where you want these related lists to go. If you look in your components side on the left-hand side and just you know, clear your selection, clear your query that you've started there, you'll notice there's a standard component called related list -single. And I love this. I really love this. Can you just click and drag one related list single component into the layout for me?
It does not.
So it's on the left-hand side. You just keep scrolling down. It's underneath record detail.
Yep.
So you pick and drag, just put it anywhere you want.
So I've got it in here twice. This related list cannot be displayed because it is not in the current page layout.
That's fine. That's because you haven't selected your object yet. So notice on the right-hand side, it asks you what's the related list you want to show, and it defaults to the first one. Now, we don't have approval history as a related list enabled on the page layout, so that's fine. But if you click in where it says related list, you can choose other things like job applications. For example, another thing you can do is you can pick that up and put it anywhere you want on that page. So if you don't want users to have to click related to see that, if you want to show it all the time, you could drop it like in the header or underneath a detail or above chatter or below chatter. And something else you can do on the right, Jeremy, on the right hand side, if you scroll down a little bit, it says set component visibility. And it allows you to add a filter. Can you click on that for me? On this particular thing, there are fancy things that you can do. Back in the day, when we had Salesforce Classic all the time, people would say, can I just make this related list only appear in certain situations? And the way that you did that before was actually to create a record type, assign a page layout to it, take the related lists off the page layout and just go with it. Now what you can do is you could say, I only want to show these job applications if this candidate is marked as active. You could also put some funky stuff in there that helps with training, like on day one, if start date of current user is, you know, 1 week ago, display this related list. If start date of current user is 3 weeks ago, then display this related list. And you can make certain related lists and components just appear as your candidate or as your user ramps up with the platform. Is everybody with me on that? So you can use these filters to do very cool things, for sure. I actually have one which is called ISV opportunities. So if I've ever worked with a partner on an opportunity to sell some business, I will only ever show that related list if there is something populated in the ISV field on my opportunity. So you can make stuff appear and disappear as and when you need it to. And in this Trailhead module, all we've had to do is put the recent items related list, or the recent items component, into the top of the page. Are there any questions about this? I just wanted to give you an overview because I'm very conscious that we haven't covered it yet, and I wanted to explain the difference between that and page layouts. Oh, Jeremy, something else you can do. Related record. Remember how frustrating it was to look at a review and only see like a auto number?
Yep.
Can you click on details for me?
Details.
So you don't have any relationships on here. But anyway, if we were looking at reviews, we could perhaps put a component on the right-hand side for related record and just show the interviewer details and show the position details so that you don't have to rely on a hover. You could just have it pop there on the screen for you. So there's lots of different things that you can do. Don't save this because you'll all fail your Trailhead badge. Does that all make sense to everybody? Yeah, okay. So let's have a look at your position object, Jeremy, next. We got 15 minutes left. I think I could possibly cover record type. We could cover record types. So, but before I start yakking away, Jeremy, what did you learn about record types through this experience?
Well, I guess I like how you define the record type as a text box or a URL or a pick list. I like that. Makes sense to me. And I think going through it and making multiple custom fields with those record types, it reinforces it.
You mean the data types?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
The Lightning page layouts, I still find confusing.
Okay.
But I'll get there. You
will. So the next task on the customizer user interface for a recruiting app is to create record types on the position object. So you're on the position object now. Can you talk us through what record types you built? Okay, so there are within the record types, there were it asked you to create two, a technical position and a non-technical position, and I think this was different. I think I was thinking of this like a pick list, and yet I guess that since this record type I think could be applied more broadly as opposed to a pick list, which can only be applied to a specific field. Mm-hmm. So it had me create record types, and I would think of that as sort of like I was thinking of it kind of like as a lookup list. So I could create this record type of technical and non-technical, and then say multiple custom fields would reference this record type instead of having to create a pick list, a duplicative pick list for each of those custom fields. Does that make sense? That's how I was thinking of it. Okay. Would it help if I describe that? I mean, so there's two situations. There's two considerations for record types. I would use a record type if I needed to make certain pick list values available for a specific type of. Let's say, for example, oh God, let me think. When have I used record types before? In a customer service environment where you have a case. A case could be a problem, a question, or an issue. And you might have different statuses available for that case depending on whether it is a problem, a question, or an issue. You would also have different fields that you want to track depending on whether it's a problem, a question, or an issue. So what record types enable you to do is, first of all, influence what pick list values are available across all the pick lists across the whole object. They also enable you to assign different page layouts to them. and we actually try and apply record types according to business logic as opposed to, and the use case that's been presented in this Trailhead badge is around having hiring managers able to create positions only for their own departments, because there are different features that need to be made available depending on whether it's technical or non-technical. Those features could include pick list values, they could include fields on the page layout, they could include sections on the page layout, they could also include buttons, actions, and related lists. So if you need to deliver a completely different experience for a technical position compared to a non-technical position, and you can't, you know, back in the old days, you probably create two different tables. You might have a position at the top, and then you might have technical and non-technical positions tables underneath. This is a way of keeping it in one object, but still creating a silo within that object. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a question? If we're creating this within a single object, what is I'm not clear as to why I would want to create a record type instead of just creating making the field a pick list field, and then within the pick list have the choices of non-technical position and technical position.
That's great if you are thinking just in the confines of data. If you just want to say, if this is a technical position, then I want these pick list fields to be available. The change comes when you want to introduce a new section that contains fields that are only about technical positions, and a second section that contains fields that are only about non-technical positions. Because the mantra around this is around not giving users more than they need, because you want to make their experience, you're trying to make their job easier, not harder.
Okay, so using a record type, you could use that to trigger further functionality, whereas a pick list can't really do so.
Well, a pick list, you could create dependencies, but if it needs to go beyond that, if you need to show or hide different fields or show or hide different related lists, for example, your position and related position. No, that's confusing for people. Don't worry, I'm thinking too far ahead. But it's a way of narrowing down the features available depending on business logic. So in this instance, it asks you to create two record types on the position record, one for non-technical position, one for technical position. Jeremy, show us what's under the page layout assignment button.
Sure.
So here are all your profiles on the left, and then across the top, you've got your record types. Look at how many different page layouts you could end up creating as a result of this.
And I thought there was a place where we had set up where it prompted me to show, and that might have been a different exercise, where we set up one page layout for one user and a different page layout for a different user, so they saw different things.
Yeah, so you can absolutely do that. This takes it one step further and says, actually, within the page layout that user can see, here's a way of splitting it out according to business logic.
Okay.
Just thinking about this technical, non-technical position. On the position, you have some fields that are like operating system or certified level, etc. Those might not be relevant to a non-technical position. So record types enable you to create a second page layout, assign it to that record type, and make that information relevant. Jamie's just linked some really useful resources as well. The challenge is that record types I always find hard to explain, because I can explain it in generic levels, but it's not until you actually need them that the generic stuff starts to sink in. So in this instance, they want you to create a record type for technical position and a record type for non-technical position. And the there are only 2 profiles that need the technical position record type, and those are the recruiter technical and the system administrator. And then it actually enables you to change the department. So for technical recruitment, it limits the department that can be selected. So it means you can only select IT if it's a technical job. Again, you could just do this with pick lists, but the difference comes from if you've got other related lists that you want to show or hide. And then for non-technical, they actually have said that you can make non-technical positions only available for finance, support, and sales departments.
I'm trying to remember where we created that so I can show that to folks.
So that will be in the page layout assignment. Let me have a look. Yeah. It will be in the profile itself, because in the profile, that's where you actually assign the record type.
Nope, not there.
To make this even more confusing.
Well, I know we created the page layout, and then I say who gets to see that page layout.
Mm-hmm.
What is edit assignments? It should be up here at the top. Oh, where was it?
No, if you click on page layouts on the left, just come out of this.
Okay. There.
And click on page layout assignment.
Oh, thank you.
You'll see it all. You'll get to the same menu.
Okay.
So at the moment, you've just got the one position that's assigned to all the profiles.
Okay. I thought there was a place. I know there was a place where I had to set the recruiter and the non-recruiter with different layouts.
Yeah. And the challenge for that is you only see that when you first create the record type. It's really annoying.
Oh, okay.
So
because I remember doing that. I remember assigning the there was 5 different types of roles from the managed package, and 2 of them went to the technical, and 3 of them went to the non-technical.
Yeah, I'm with you. And unfortunately, you only see that once. And what that does, there's kind of 2 layers of assignment for record types. One is when you first create the record type, you say, which profiles do I make this record type available to? What that translates to is when these profiles create a new position record, what's the record types that they're allowed to select?
Okay.
The second part is once they've created that record, once they've created a position record and they've selected the non-technical record type, what is the page layout they see? And what this matrix does is it allows you to make differentiations per profile as well within that. So it's almost like an onion and very, very related.
So if I click on one of these, profiles, will I not be able to then see their layout?
Correct. If you click on that profile, it will take you to the profile and you'll be able to see which record type has been assigned. So you'll be able to check that it's the non-technical record type for the position that's been assigned. And what that means is these non-technical recruiters can create a position and it will default to the non-technical record type for that position, which means they will see the page layout that you have assigned to that record type.
Oh boy.
It's horrible to describe.
I was gonna say, I don't know how I would find it here. I would.
Sure. So if you look at if you search for record type, it's a section all by itself. So you have on the profile, you have page layouts, you have field level security, and you have record type. So you'll notice that where there are record types that exist, it will say your page layout varies by record type. So if you keep scrolling down past the field level security section.
Is it right here? Oh, okay.
Don't click anything.
Oh, goodness.
I know. So now you're looking at tabs. here is your record type settings. So for this profile, it shows all the objects, and those that have record types, keep scrolling, you will see positions on the right hand side, hopefully.
There it is. Technical right there.
And it will tell you that because they've got that one record type and it's the only record type they've got, when they click new position, they won't see the option to select a record type because they've only got one. So the position they create will default to the non-technical position, which means they will then see the page layout that you've assigned to that record type. Where it gets confusing is when you've got more than one record type and then people go, what's the difference? I know, it's horrible. It's something that comes with practice. So Jeremy, if you go, so that tells us which profile has that record type. If you click back on your browser, that should take you back to the page layout assignment. If you click edit assignment, what we have to do here is assign the non-technical page layout. There you go. So you've got technical position layout. So let's go ahead and assign that to the technical recruiter. So you have to read your matrix here. You have to find your technical recruiter profile, and then you find your technical position record type. You click that to make it purple, and then you select, yeah, you got it. That's it. Perfect. And then you save that. And then you do the same for your non-technical with the, well, your non-technical's fine. But this is where you might want to relabel your position layout to say this is a non-technical position layout, just so that you don't get confused.
All right, so position layout, hold on a second. So that would be record types.
What I like to do in the first instance is I just assign everybody, all profiles for the technical position should get the technical position layout. If they're not, then they get the non-technical position layout, unless and then you start looking into with the business analysts, like, okay, do finance need an extra section? If they need an extra section, do we need to create a finance version of that page layout? And which record type does it apply to?
So since it says non-technical position here under record type label, I would have expected it to. Where's the page layout? Oh, goodness. Now I lost track of where. Oh, page layout assignment. I would have expected here, for instead of it to say position layout, it would have had
technical position, non-technical position. Yeah. So you would need to change the properties of your page layout for that.
Oh, okay.
So this badge just takes you through the motions of creating a record type and assigning a page layout. It's really hard to explain. What I might do is, if people are still confused by this, why don't I think in my org, I've got some other use cases that I can talk you through that might help. Because
oh goodness, no, wrong one. Sorry.
No, you're good. So the rest of the badge is around making sure that you customize your position page layouts and you assign them to the correct record types. Yeah, there you go. What I would do, Jeremy, is on the right hand side where it says technical position, I would actually just assign the technical position layout to all of those profiles.
Here, sorry.
For the technical position record type. So if you go back to your page layout assignment, edit assignment, on the right hand column where it says technical position.
Yep.
Yeah, select all of that column.
Oh, okay.
Oh, look at that. Then select technical, and then save it, and your job's done.
Oh, so it selects that for every role, everything, even though many of these profiles wouldn't be using it, but if for whatever reason they are, all technical positions get the technical position layout, all non-technical positions, whoops, sorry, mea culpa.
No, you're good.
All non-technical positions
Would have the non-technical position layout,
Have
which
the
would have any technical fields on it.
got it. Okay. And then it defaults to the non-technical. In cases where it's not defined, it would
Yes.
to the non-technical.
Yeah. And that becomes more relevant if you've already created data in the system and then you go and add record types, because the job you have to do after that to keep things clean is to go back over the existing records and assign them with a record type. Okay. Which can change the data. So I've had hours of meetings over that in my career.
Okay.
Okay, clear as mud. This is probably one of the most confusing parts of Salesforce. So it does come eventually. And then the final thing was to enable chatter on the review object. So we are at the end of time. In fact, we're slightly over, but Jeremy, can you show us quickly how you enabled chatter?
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Manager, review, object. Oh boy. I always have trouble with this one.
Yeah, no worries. So it's because you're used to working with this object. So in order to enable chatter on it, you actually need to go to your chatter settings.
Oh, goodness. Chatter is not my friend.
And it's called feed tracking. Yeah, so this is your chatter settings. So on the left-hand side, you have an option called feed tracking. So if you click that.
And review.
It's
right there.
Yeah, not halfway down. And this is where you can go object by object and say, do I want to allow people to chatter about this object?
So my understanding is what this would do is if somebody makes a change on a review, if somebody makes a change to one of these things, it will automatically post that change in the chatter window. So ostensibly, if Kat had reviewed a candidate and then marked experience or the interview, information about that review, that her results would automatically be posted to the chatter feed. So the other people who are part of the review process would be monitoring it, would know that, okay, Kat has finished reviewing this candidate and these are her comments.
Correct. That's one use case. The other use case is if you are all working remotely and Kat has interviewed a candidate and needs to loop back to HR with feedback. Kat could actually post her feedback into chatter and mention someone from HR about this candidate, bearing in mind that the candidate is legally allowed to see the notes. So, don't put stuff in there that you wouldn't want the candidate to see. And hey presto, chatter is for conversations. Therefore, it's for focused conversations, but it's also an easy way to notify people of changes if they are following that record. Okay. We should have a class social soon. Just imagining that person asking for notes. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. It can happen. Okay. Thank you, Jeremy, for taking the hot seat this evening. Very, very much appreciated. Absolutely took it for the team. And you just took us through 2 Trailhead badges. So if you haven't completed these badges this week, this is your homework. I will add a stretch. I didn't have anything inappropriate. I will add a stretch badge for you if I can find one, but please go through this experience. It's really important because it enables you to practice all of the things we've been teaching you. And you need these concepts for next week, because next week we start going into the funky stuff. We're going to be having talks about Process Builder, which is how you can make magical things happen when you change a record. And the following week, I have arranged a guest speaker for you to come and talk to you about flow, which is also very cool. After that, I think we shall go a bit deeper and get you guys building dashboards. And before we start taking a look at, before we take stock and think about, just clear up any outstanding questions and so on. So thank you everybody again for turning up continuously. Really appreciate it. And good luck and have fun doing the badges. Take care and see you next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Gemma, I have something for you that I was trying to think of a way to be appreciative and thank you. My wife